up. So stand by. And with that, we are live with Lynn right here on Amazon. We're also broadcasting out to a couple of other places. And if you are watching on something other than Amazon Live, I encourage you, amazon.com/live. Come on over. We've got the chat open. You can ask Lynn any questions you want about her book. And there is the book, Wrecking Ball Relationships: How to Identify, Live with, or Leave the Narcissist in Your Life. Lynn, welcome.
Thank you, Scott, for having me.
It is, yeah, it's just great. We've had so many great conversations, and now your book is published, and I'm going to tell everybody it is in the carousel right now. Click on it. You can take a look on the inside. You can read it. You can start reading the book, but Lynn has made a special price just for today for Amazon. And so it's the perfect gift. You can buy it. You can give it as a gift right here because on Amazon you can click the address you want to send it to. Maybe there's somebody that you've been having conversations with and their relationship, well, we're going to talk about that in a moment, but let's just say you can be the hero, give them the book, send it to, have it sent to them, and so with that, Lynn, tell everybody who you are and what's going on in your world.
Well, hi, I'm Lynn Catalano. I'm an attorney, I'm an author, I'm a coach, and a speaker. And I have survived toxic relationships, narcissistic abuse, toxic bosses, and I love to share stories about all of it to groups big and small. And I wrote this book really with the intent of a guidebook for people going through something similar to what I went through, and a resource so that people have one stop shopping. And thank you for having me today.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And so before we get into it too far, let's just talk about narcissism and what it means because the term and you start off with the book too, talking about giving some personal stories, but then also that this term has been grabbed onto because of something certain famous political figures, and it gets thrown around a little bit. But what do we really need to understand about narcissism?
So, unfortunately, we incorporate certain words into our vernacular, um, into our everyday language that carry some real heavy gravitas. They are psychological diagnoses. You saw it in the 80s. People started using the term psycho or psychopath. People say, she's crazy, I'm crazy. Well, when you get down to it, now the trend is, oh, they take so many selfies. They're such a narcissist. Well, narcissism has very specific criteria and characteristics, and those are listed in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which is the benchmark for all personality disorders, psychological disorders that people in the medical field use. And, the Mayo Clinic has set out some very set behaviors and things that narcissists do or possess. And you need to follow these medical guides to find out the exact diagnosis of narcissism and narcissistic personality disorder. Trust me when I tell you, it's not because you take too many selfies. Narcissists are incapable of exhibiting empathy. They desire praise and recognition and reverence, and they need to be the most important person in the room all the time. They need to be in control of every situation and every person. And when they're not in control, they often belittle the person in control until they capitulate. Um, Narcissists don't communicate well, sometimes at all. They don't have many close friendships. They have many, many, many acquaintances, and they genuinely believe that people love to be around them and want them there, and that they're very important. It keeps circling back to that. Narcissists like attention on themselves, and if it's not, they have a tendency to act out in some way. So, whether that be a perceived offense that sends them into a tantrum, or it becomes something um, of worse, something like narcissistic rage, where they can really wreak havoc on a holiday or family gathering. But I actually, my whole chapter 2 is dedicated to the science behind the diagnosis, and actually illustrating how that plays out in different people.
I I really appreciate that you turn to the science on that. Because of course for me, I love looking at the actual research papers, not the popular press interpretation of points out of the research papers. I want to know what they did, how did they do it, what did they study, what did we really learn, and uh, uh, and then leave kind of the interpretation to how it actually applies to us based on the science. So, good job on that. I really do appreciate that that you have the science part of it. So, because we do jump to using terms without really understanding what they mean. But in the green room, right beforehand, we were talking about just briefly about emotional intelligence, and this is one of the areas that you have some skill in. And emotional intelligence, of course, is just the ability to control your own emotions but also read the emotions of others. And what I'm hearing, one of those problems with narcissists is that they either can't or won't uh, get the emotion read the emotions of the other person.
Yeah, I actually believe that narcissists possess very low emotional intelligence. Empathy is probably the biggest characteristic of emotional intelligence, and narcissists do not possess the ability to exhibit empathy. I'm a big proponent of leading with empathy, and I believe that leaders who exhibit that and show high emotional intelligence in the workplace build a loyal group of employees who are more likely to stay in the organization. There's more likely to be promotion from within. You have a better brand, a better reputation. All the great things about being a wonderful place to work. I mean, certainly, but narcissists are the opposite. Narcissists never ask open-ended questions. I found this to be one of the most difficult concepts to understand when I realized that the narcissist in my life didn't know me very well.
Mm.
And that was shocking to me. And I thought about it, and I tried to recall a conversation between the two of us where he had asked me questions.
Mhm.
And all I could think of were questions like, would you like chocolate or vanilla? Or would you like to have dinner at 6 or 6:30? But never, what's your greatest goal in life?
Mhm.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Why did you want to do that? Like, what made you love that, or what made you interested in that? I mean,
Mhm.
never. And as a result of that, I mean, here you and I have had a lot of conversations about building relationships. How do you build a relationship without asking open-ended questions?
And just to clarify for folks, if you're listening, so here we are having a great conversation with Lynn Catalano. Let me put her book up here again, Wrecking Ball Relationships: How to Identify, Live With, or Leave the Narcissist in Your Life. The book is available, special pricing today on Amazon. So make sure you take advantage of that. Open-ended and closed questions. So just for folks, open-ended questions can't end in yes or no. Closed questions are yes or no. It's one or the other.
Right.
But open-ended questions give you the chance to interpret and fill in. And so, yeah, when you're developing those relationships with people, one of the questions that I like to ask people the first time I get to know them, and you have been the benefit or recipient of this as well, is I ask, "How's your world?" And I'll just throw this out for everyone in the audience. The next time you're at the checkout stand and that cashier asks you all those expected questions: How was your day? Did you find everything you're looking for? You respond back with, you can go ahead and answer the question, but then ask them, How's your world? And see what happens, because it's open ended and they have to interpret it. And you can see they're going to start thinking, is my world this cashier stand, this check stand? Is it this job? Is it my place in the cosmos? What is my world? And so, yeah, asking those open-ended questions, like you said, what are your greatest? What's your most? What's the those types of things? And then paying attention and using those active listening skills, right?
Yes. So that's another part of emotional intelligence, right? Is about actually practicing active or reflective listening. Because if you're just going to ask the question and not pay attention, like, what's the point? But if you're going to ask that great open-ended question, make sure that you employ that tactic. And it's so easy. I mean, we really can do it if we just put our phone down for a few minutes. But you have to listen to actually understand the concept, and then repeat back the concept to the speaker. So you say, "Oh, you said you love hot air ballooning because it was something your grandfather took you on when you were,
Mm,
you know, yes. Oh, yes. Now we're engaged. Now we're building something. We're building rapport. Now
mhm,
we're moving to a different level, because now that person's going to remember me and I'm going to remember that person. It's not
right.
casual anymore because we've had that mutual engagement. I've listened to what you had to say and I've processed it and I've confirmed it with you. So, I think that's about taking relationships to a whole nother level. The key is always emotional intelligence.
Mhm.
Narcissists don't possess that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and again, emotional intelligence, being able to read the emotions of others and control your own. And I think that's another one of the key points that you bring out about what narcissistic behavior is.
Yeah, they don't regulate their own emotions well, and that comes out in a lot of different ways. So most likely, They have trouble communicating. They have trouble expressing themselves because they can't control that. So they
Mm,
turn to um, terrible tactics. I mean, they use terrible things that are hurtful and destructive to other people. So they like to do things like they use the silent treatment. And the silent treatment to me is perhaps the worst tactic that narcissists use because there is never any conflict resolution. There's no opportunity to discuss anything. There's no opportunity to resolve anything. They basically pretend that you don't exist anymore.
mm,
And it could be for hours, could be for days, could be for months. My narcissist has used it on me for years. And it's really cruel and unusual punishment. That's how I look at that. Um,
sure.
but,
Yeah.
but they use other things too. They use things like triangulation, where they pit two people against one another in order to make themselves appear better and make themselves the martyr, the savior, the perfectionist, whatever the role they're playing. Um, they use that in order to get whatever they were trying to get in the first place, whatever
Mhm.
their need or want was. And then the third tactic they use is very common, and this word is also in our vernacular now, and I see it everywhere, and I see it on television shows, and I see it on the news, and I just sometimes it's used properly and sometimes not. And the word is
Mhm.
gaslighting, and I'm sure
Mm,
you can
mhm.
hear it as well. But gaslighting is where a narcissist changes the reality of what occurred to fit their scenario, to fit what they
Mm,
want
mhm.
you to know. So let's say that I accuse the narcissist in my life of perhaps flirting with someone at dinner. Well, he would tell me that I was crazy, that didn't happen. Perhaps I had too much to drink. Perhaps I took some medication. Perhaps I just did not see what actually occurred, and basically just tell me it didn't happen.
Mhm.
So, there's a lot of ways to combat that, and but it creates chaos and confusion, which is their desired intent, to kind of deflect and deny from whatever you were asking them. So that's what gaslighting is. That's what gaslighting looks like. Whereas whatever you're hearing in popular media,
Mhm.
sometimes matches, sometimes doesn't.
Yeah. And, we're just talking about, we've talked before, I've got my Disneyland mug, and I've got Disney stuff around, big part of my growing up. And you use that. You use those stories to help people understand.
Well, I love pop culture. I love Disney. My family goes every year to Disney. We watch all the movies together. Um, I love movies and television and music and Broadway shows. And I feel that it's a place where we can all relate in some way. So it doesn't matter what our age or our nationality or our geographic location or our socioeconomic level or our gender, any of it, religion, whatever you want to, race, any of it. We find
Right.
commonality in pop culture. And so I wanted to bring that in. I thought it brought a little levity and humor into a rather serious subject.
Indeed.
And B, I think it makes the concepts more relatable and understandable when
Mhm.
you think back to a movie that you loved and you think, oh my gosh, in the movie Tangled, this princess was being gaslit by her captor, basically by Mother
Mhm.
Gothel, who took her away
Mhm.
from her parents and hid her in the tower. Well, yes, that's exactly what she was doing. And she did traditional narcissistic behaviors. She isolated Rapunzel. How much more isolated can you get than taking you in a tower?
Right, exactly, yeah.
You know what?
The only person that she got to see, and it controlled everything, right? Controlled
Yes,
everything.
everything. And
And
keep going,
yeah,
keep going. She controlled her
yeah,
perceptions, right? Like
mhm.
she would say, "I just want to see the lights on my birthday." And she'd say, "Well, it's dangerous. You shouldn't do
Yes.
it."
Mhm.
That was all gaslighting. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that was eye-opening to me to look at a movie that
Mhm.
is so beloved and, see it in that light, for sure.
Yeah, and, and this is one of those important things is that, we can use things like movies where in many cases some of the things are exaggerated so that we can see the contrast. But when you actually look at someone's life, it's probably pretty tame to what the reality is of the person that is having to live with that narcissistic person.
Yeah,
And so we may have some exaggeration for the cartoon and for that contrast, but in reality, it's not. There's no comedy about that.
no, no, and I can tell you, with me, I often say, and like everyone in my house knows this, if we didn't laugh, we'd cry all the time. So, sometimes we use a little dark humor when we're talking about these really serious, sensitive subjects,
Mhm,
and it does lighten the whole mood because having gone on this journey and survived this constant abuse, I can tell you it's a dark time,
mhm.
and
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 I and
there's no
Yeah, and
light,
that's and this is another point that I want to make sure that is emphasized for people. And just to remind everyone that we are talking with the author of Wrecking Ball Relationships: How to Identify, Live with, or Leave the Narcissist in Your Life. Lynn Catalano is with us here. The book is on special price in Amazon. If you are watching anywhere else other than Amazon, go to amazon.com/live. Come on and join us. We've got the chat. You can ask questions. And narcissism, we talked a little bit about what it meant, talked about some of these ways to identify it, maybe. Um, and the point that I want to make is that this is abuse. This is an abusive relationship. And some people may say that maybe it doesn't fit into the categories. It fits into the categories.
yeah, unfortunately. Um, I talk a lot about emotional abuse and the fact that it doesn't look like what we all perceive abuse to look like. But when someone is giving you the silent treatment for extended periods of time repeatedly,
Hmm.
this is not normal behavior. When someone leaves events and gatherings and dinners in a rage, this is not normal behavior. When they use coercive control over finances, which is a big, big part of narcissism, because that goes back to that need to control everything.
Hmm.
Um, that's abuse. Uh, when they don't respect your boundaries, when they use manipulation to get what they want, these are all forms of abuse. And there are a lot of really awful things that come with being with someone with narcissistic personality disorder. And they belittle you, they make you feel like you're crazy, they want you to be confused, they want they have their own agenda and they're going to do whatever they need to do to accomplish those things on their agenda. They really do not care about your emotions. And that goes back to the whole concept of emotional intelligence, that they It's not only that they can't regulate their own emotions, they just don't care about
Mhm.
your emotions.
Right. Yeah. And so, uh, identifying this. Um, so when a person's in that relationship, and it can be a spousal relationship, could be a family member, uh, could be maybe a friend. How do we identify this, because we do want to move on in a little bit, because I want to tell everybody there's hope, there's light, there's opportunity, there are things that you can do. You don't have to endure this. But we've talked about these characteristics. How do we identify that when you're in the midst of that?
You know, for me, the signs were there, but when I started Googling his behaviors and
Hmm.
researching the things he was saying and doing to me, that's the biggest red flag you have. If you need to research your partner, girlfriend, boyfriend,
Hmm.
parent, sibling, friend, boss's behaviors, um, you should know there's something very wrong. But when
Hmm.
you start to see these very typical, consistent things that they do, and be it utilizing things like the silent treatment and gaslighting and triangulation, which are the big ones, or the need to be in control. There were little signs like when my narcissist wouldn't be in control, all of a sudden he'd get quiet and it seemed like he was pouting. And I thought, what's going on here? Like, what's wrong? Well, he needed to be the decision maker. I
Hmm.
equate it to elementary school. Like, he needed to be the line leader. And if he wasn't the line leader, everybody else was going to suffer because
Hmm.
that's how it goes.
Wow.
Um, so I think identification is fairly easy when you know what to look for. And
Hmm.
again, that's why I go back to the science. You look at those characteristics and those behaviors. If narcissists are anything, they are completely consistent in their behaviors.
Interesting. Hmm.
Doesn't matter which one they are. I told you, partner, boss, spouse,
Hmm.
any of it. They are
Yeah.
consistent in their behavior. So you will see the same types of things over and over again. And that lack of empathy is probably one of the glaring flashing lights. And you just have to pose it properly, ask the right questions. Um,
Hmm.
they just cannot express empathy. I actually had a really terrible experience with my narcissist, and my husband was present, for which I was grateful for, so that he could witness this, because it was again one of those things where I went, "What just happened?" So my mother had died very suddenly at 66 of a heart condition that we didn't even know existed. She had
Wow.
congestive heart failure. So about a year later, um, I very suddenly, a young woman, very suddenly started to get a little bit of an irregular heartbeat. And I was so concerned that I went to my physician,
Hmm.
who did an EKG and recommended seeing a cardiologist. So I said to my narcissist in front of my husband, I said, "I'm so frightened. I don't know what's going on here." I didn't say, "Here, we just lost mom." I mean, duh.
Hmm. Right.
And
Yeah.
I said, I'm so frightened. Like, I have to go and see this cardiologist, and
Yeah.
I'm just very stressed about it. And he said to me, "Yeah, I know. My back's been killing me."
My gosh.
So, end
Yeah.
result, by the
Hmm.
way, whatever it was a blip on my radar. Thank God. I've been
I am
doing
grateful to hear that, Lynn.
this. Thank you. That was, more than 10 years ago. But
Hmm.
um, it was, again, the kind of thing that leaves you scratching your head like, what? What?
Hmm.
don't like a stranger would say, "How are you today? What's going on now?" Like, well, someone off the street would have more compassion and
Mhm.
so I think that's the
Wow.
empathy and control are probably two of my biggest ones.
I was as I was reading through that, the one of the things that it came to mind was a recent encounter I had, and I'm thinking, maybe that's person that I was talking with
Mm,
is a narcissist or has these characteristics, at least to some extent. So, a friend of mine, good friend, at the end of last year, died very suddenly and unexpectedly from COVID. Uh, no other health conditions, anything, just got it and it went bad. So we were at his funeral. Well, this man that died, great friend of mine, was our computer guy. He was the network guy. He was the one we all turned to, and he helped with us with all our businesses and so forth. And I was talking to another person there, and and as I made this comment about saying, "Wow, just I'm glad that you came here to help remember Terry." And the comment was, he goes, "Yeah, well, good thing is that I've already replaced him as replaced my IT guy." And I'm thinking, his widow
wow.
is right over here, his parents are right over here,
Yeah.
and it's not, yeah,
Whew.
I'm gonna miss him as a human being. It's, well, it's a good thing I got my problem solved
Whew.
because, man, he hurt me.
Oof.
So as I was reading this in your book,
Oof.
that's the story that reminded me, and I'll just remind everybody, the book is on special price. Wrecking Ball Relationships: How to Identify, which we've been talking about, how to identify and live with or leave the narcissist in your life, by Lynn Catalano. She's here today. And so we've kind of talked about what narcissism is. You have science in the book so people can look at that. And so let's talk a little bit about living with this person, because it's not always, uh, you're not always able to leave that person. If it's a family member, maybe you can separate out. But I'm thinking, if the person is depressed, they're gonna, at some point, maybe they're gonna say, I don't want to be depressed. It's a condition. I can find treatment for this.
Right.
Obviously, like you were talking about with the heart potential, you found treatment. Fortunately, and I'm grateful again, Lynn, you're good. But being a narcissist and having that, I can't imagine that they're gonna say, I think I'm gonna get treatment for this. And even if they did, is there?
Yeah. So, narcissistic personality disorder is the one personality disorder where the victims of their abuse are more likely to seek therapy than they will. So it's
Mhm,
unfortunate. In order for them to get help, they'd have to admit that they have a problem, which most do not.
mhm,
Um, I would never generalize and tell you no one seeks help because I'm sure some of them along the way do. And
mhm,
I'm sure that someone has been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder and become a productive member of society that is has relationships. I'm sure that they've somewhere along the way there's been someone. However,
mhm,
the
mhm,
statistics are not kind in that people who suffer from this are not likely to change.
mhm,
So, if you live with someone with this, you need to figure out how to reframe your thinking. Um, I advise anyone who is living with someone with narcissistic personality disorder, please seek professional counseling. Therapy is incredible and incredibly supportive for someone in that situation. um, if not therapy, talk to someone.
mhm,
It's just so important not to be isolated. Like, Rapunzel, and
Right.
you need a support
Yeah.
network. I talk a lot about this in the book. I talk a lot about having a group of friends or family, or whether it's your parent, your child, your sister, your brother, your friends, whoever it is. Talk to them. Make sure that you have someone that you can express how you're feeling to, because you can't keeping it inside is very negative.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I really talk a lot about that. Talk a lot about self-care. And this is a concept that doesn't really get its due in our society. People think of
Mhm.
self-care as maybe getting a manicure or a massage, and it seems very selfish. But in reality, self-care is about making sure that you're healthy, both both all mentally, physically, and emotionally. So whether it's taking a walk, or some form of exercise, or it's meditation or prayer, or seeking therapy, or having a cup of coffee with friends, or eating
Mhm.
healthy, or putting on clean clothes. Those are all parts of self care. We tend to not pay attention to ourself when we're victimized in this way. So I can't stress enough how important it is to make yourself aware of your needs. Um,
Yeah, I think yeah, the self-care, and again, it is not the, self-indulgence, but
right.
it really is caring for yourself, and there are these different things, so exercise, diet, I love that you bring out just putting on fresh clothes.
Yeah,
Sometimes we think that some of those things are so simple, but for a person that's in crisis, and I think we can label it this way.
yeah,
As a person's in crisis, that those fundamental things get lost.
yeah,
And then it's a spiral, right? Of um you're always being put down, you're being controlled, you're being manipulated. The reality is trying to be changed around you. You're being isolated from other people. And so you don't feel worthy, so you don't do the right things, so you have bad habits, you don't sleep right, you don't exercise, you don't eat right, and so then you do have more physical and mental problems.
you got it.
Mhm.
There's a concept when you're in a relationship with with someone with NPD, that
Mhm.
you're it's called walking on eggshells.
Mhm.
And I really didn't hear this term until I was writing the book. And then I realized that I was always walking on eggshells with this person.
Mhm.
It's a putting yourself in a position of hyper vigilance. So
Mhm.
you're always on the edge of your seat, trying not to offend the person, making sure you know their triggers, you're not going to do anything to set them off. Like they're a ticking time bomb.
Mhm.
I mean,
Right.
and
Mhm.
then that period of time, you're not thinking about yourself, and you're not thinking about, I'm hungry, or I'm not, or I should eat something healthy, or a vegetable, or I should go for a walk. No, you're just
Right.
wound up inside
Yeah.
your own self. So that's the real scary part of being with someone who has this.
Mhm. Yeah, and so it's so we talked about, kinda living with this person, so they're not gonna likely get treatment, so you need to find counseling or whatever it is that's gonna allow you to help you deal with that,
Yeah.
but then there comes a time, maybe, that you have to separate, you have to distance, you have to cut that off. This is gonna be very difficult because they're gonna make it very difficult for you.
Yeah.
So what happens at that point?
Well, first of all, I think that you go through a period of grief.
Mm.
in
Mhm.
grieving, whether it's the actual relationship or the person you thought they were. For me, it was, I just wanted that person that I thought he was, and then when I realized he was just never going to be that person, I mean, you definitely grieve that loss. But then there's a point that it's pure freedom.
Mm.
It's freedom from the drama. It's
Mhm.
freedom from walking on eggshells. It's freedom from the pain.
Right.
And so for that, um, I'm grateful for that. Um, yes, I hate the fact that I didn't have that relationship that I wanted, but it's not within my control to make it that way. So I think
Mhm.
then I go to the prayer of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I think
Mhm.
about, you know
Sure.
we control what is in our control, and grant me the peace to move on from what I can't control. Right?
Mhm.
I just
Absolutely.
watched terribly, but you get the point.
Yeah. We do understand. Yeah. Yeah. And, yeah, so there are things that are within our control. There are things that are outside of our control,
Right.
and being able to understand which is which and take appropriate action and realize that you won't be able to, heal everything like we would like. We would always like to heal. If we could, we would, heal those diseases that, people have.
Right.
We can't. We don't have control over that. Um, and so we're gonna have pain, but it's a different pain than what you were experiencing prior.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that once you once you come to that realization, and you can process the loss, then I
Mhm,
think moving on and living your own best life, however that is, without that person, is the best course of action. Certainly, um,
mhm,
I challenge anyone to experience one area where this person has caused a lot of tumult.
mhm,
So, think about a family holiday that they always throw a tantrum, and people are waiting because it's not if they're going to throw a tantrum, it's when. And have that holiday or that gathering without them. And all of a
mhm.
sudden, everyone's getting along, everyone's respectful. And you think,
And that's the other thing that I was thinking that comes to mind is that whether it's a family member, friend, or whatever it is, that when you make that separation, who comes back into your circle that you are missing? And you didn't know you were missing them
right,
because they probably started gradually, distancing themselves because of the behavior of the narcissist.
yeah, yeah,
And so by
good point.
making that painful cut,
Yeah,
you're able to bring different joy into your life.
yeah. That's interesting because I'm experiencing that a little bit now, where
Mm, mhm,
people that I haven't had a lot of contact with over the years are coming back because they know that that person's not in my life anymore.
mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a really good point. It's
I wanna put
very
this back up, remind everybody, this book is on a special deal right now. Make sure you go out and buy it. Buy it for friends, buy it for yourself. Wrecking Ball Relationships: How to Identify, Live With, and Leave the Narcissist in Your Life. And we've been talking about this with Lynn Catalano, who is the author and is writing from experience, but also, you have some pretty good formal education.
oh,
So being able to write and do this work is, uh, you have been you've been trained into this and be
oh.
able to do the research and provide valuable help for people.
Yes, I did get a bachelor in psychology, which was a great foundation for this. Little did I know it then, at Boston University. And then I went on to law school. Um, Few people know this, but I wanted to pursue a career in a sports agency. I wanted to represent athletes. And I
Mhm.
felt as a female, you don't have to have a law degree, but I thought it was a good stepping stone. I thought it was a good
Sure,
background
sure.
for where I wanted to go. So I loved law school, but I knew I didn't want to practice law. I did take the bar exam and pass the New York State Bar for the on the first try. It was absolutely the worst experience ever. So I will never sugarcoat that. Um, and then I went into organizational leadership where I learned a lot about
Mm.
what a good workplace looks like and feels like and sounds like, and what a toxic one does.
And I think that's where this really comes in for a lot of people because we'll end up with coworkers or people in leadership over us that have these traits. And one of the things I wanted to ask is, actually years ago, a friend of mine was doing some research into narcissism, and he was an engineer, so he was approaching it from an engineer's brain. And what he was seeing was that there actually are certain career fields that tend to attract narcissists. And I was just wondering, in your research and analysis, have you seen that? Is there something that draws people in because it feeds that need?
It's funny because it happens that I worked in a lot of hospitals, and certainly people that save lives on a regular basis or hold your organs in their hands, specifically
Right.
hearts, uh,
Mhm.
tend to have those. They're spoken about as having a god complex, but isn't that NPD? I mean, like, right?
That's what I was just I'm wondering.
Certainly, I feel like we've all witnessed that type of behavior.
Yeah.
Are they more prone to it? Probably because they receive that validation and gratification. How can you compare that kind of career to anything else? I mean, certainly, I was a professional fundraiser and I was raising the money for the equipment they were using, but that didn't make me feel that way. But you know,
Mhm.
I've also known an awful lot of trial attorneys who also essentially hold your fate in their
Sure.
hands,
Yeah.
and they perform in front of the court and the jury and the judge. And gosh, if there were awards handed out for best role playing, and I
Mhm.
would say they should receive these. But I think that it's difficult to generalize because people need to possess the
Mhm.
actual characteristics in the definition of narcissistic personality disorder to really have that. Do some people have certain traits that are more narcissistic than others? Absolutely. But
Mhm.
those people also could be the most empathetic people who are willing to um, read to the blind and do things that are unrecognizable,
Mhm.
in the sense that they're not getting recognition for it, and that kind of zeroes out any narcissistic tendencies they might have. So we don't
Yeah.
know, we can't say, but
Okay.
oh
Well,
yes,
it's good to know. That's
I
good to know.
yes. And come on, if you're an actor and an act or an actress and you're getting like people are yesing you all the time and telling you how fabulous you are all the time,
Mhm.
I would imagine that's pretty difficult not to believe your own hype at some point. But
Yeah.
there's got to be people out there that are well adjusted and self aware and emotionally intelligent, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And, as we start to wind down here, and I'm gonna put your book back up, Lynn.
All
We
right.
have been having so much fun talking with Lynn Catalano, whose book recently released, Wrecking Ball Relationships: How to Identify and Live or Leave the Narcissist in Your Life. And, she has graciously put the book on special, so you can buy it today. You can buy it with one click. You can give it as a gift. And I definitely recommend, because I will say that, I will guarantee, how's that,
Ooh,
for whatever that is, that everyone has been touched by a narcissist sometime in their life. And if not, it will happen. And I am sad that that will happen, but be prepared. And Lynn's book will give you the tools, not just to identify it, but how to deal with it. And Lynn, you also help businesses, and so I want to talk a little bit about how people can hire you. So not only get the book, but also say, we have a workplace, and we have a lot of people somewhere along the line. We don't want to get into trouble. So we want to be able to identify this. We want to be able to deal with this. We want to be able to equip our people. How do people work with you?
yeah, I love speaking to organizations, teams, ERGs about learning to identify this type of person and how to how to work with them. But on the other side of that, I love going into an organization and helping them detoxify it. In order to do that, I can come in and do an analysis, and most times they've already identified the problem. I mean, being realistic, they know what's happening and they know where the issue is. If a company, excuse me, if a company is willing to invest in their organization and in their employees, I am thrilled to come in and guide them to detoxify, to spread that emotional intelligence and mutual respect, to intervene and take that person or people and do some one on one coaching with them. I think that everyone is capable of change. Just because someone exhibits those tendencies doesn't diagnose them as having NPD. And perhaps they can and are receptive to change. It's interesting. I interviewed a lot of people for the book. And one of the people I interviewed said people who are called out as toxic in a work environment are definitely more apt to change if their job is on the line. So, um, no one, you don't have to marry anyone at work. You just need to
Hmm.
have a mutual respect, respect people's boundaries, and be kind, show empathy. I mean, these are not
Hmm.
difficult concepts. Do you remember that book written in the 80s? Um, I'm ashamed I can't remember the author, but it was about, I learned all the things I needed to know about life in kindergarten.
Yes. Uh
Well, that's
huh.
all, it's like a refresher course in that. But I'm happy, eh, sometimes you're not a prophet to your own community, and you need to bring someone else in to say, look, this is not normal. This is not how things are done. And you have an exit line of people leaving because you
Hmm.
have this team or this person or this manager or this leader. So if you want to change this, let's start here. And if leadership sees the need for the change, it's going to happen.
And that's so important. I've been talking to so many different businesses and business owners, and uh, attracting and retaining a quality, talented people is
Yes,
a huge issue right now. And if people come in and they come into a work environment that is not suitable to them, there is another one that is.
correct.
And so in sales, we used to always say that your best customer is your competition's best prospect.
Whew,
And for business owners, it is the same with your talented people. So
yeah,
those people that you count on every day, the people who will sacrifice for the company, for the other people that they work with, uh, they're top on the list for all of those competitive employers out there.
yeah,
And so I say, get the book, take a look. Even if you don't feel like you're suffering from a toxic, a narcissistic relationship, If you own a business, it's probably there somewhere to some degree. Uh, Take a look, read through the book, you get an idea, and then you can contact Lynn because she can come in and help you put language to this, put science to this, give you processes that will help you. So, Lynn, how do people get a hold of you?
Well, please follow me on LinkedIn, Lynn Catalano ESQ, Instagram at Lynn Catalano Speaks, on Facebook at Lynn Catalano Speaks, and you can go to my website, www.lynncatalano.com, and it's Catalano. Thank you.
It it's right there on the screen, so you can you got her name, easy to spell. Here's an easy way to find it.
Yeah.
Get the book. There's contact information in the book. And today it is on a killer deal. You can't even buy a third of a cup of coffee for what is going to cost to this book. Wrecking Ball Relationships: How to Identify and Live with or Leave the Narcissist in Your Life. Lynn, this has been so much fun. I just I enjoy hanging out with you. We have a good time.
Me too, Scott. Yes, I feel the same. Thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed this. The time flew by. I loved your questions, and yeah, I laughed a lot.
And as you say, we have to laugh
Yes.
or we'll cry. And so it's been good. I'll send you into the green room and we'll send everyone out, but stand by. Well, hasn't this been fun? We've been talking with Lynn Catalano, and Wrecking Ball Relationships: How to Identify, Live with, or Leave the Narcissist in Your Life. I'm telling you, the book is in the carousel. It is highlighted right there. You can click on it. You can read some of the book right there. Well written, well researched, and not only will help you identify, but take appropriate action. If you have a business, if you have employees, make sure you read this book and understand the relationships that your employees are going through. And also take the advantage of getting a hold of Lynn and having her help you with her business. With that, I'm going to say thank you to everybody for tuning in and have a fabulous day.